This video is brought to you by Skillshare. The third weekend in June. It's a date that might not mean much to you unless you're paying super close attention to animated films. But it's the weekend that Pixar typically releases their major movies. This weekend has marked massive success for the studio. From Toy Story 3, Inside Out, Finding Dory, The Incredibles 2, or Toy Story 4. All movies released in the third weekend of June, and all smash commercial and financial hits. In fact, Pixar's streak of successes goes well beyond these summer releases, with the studio experiencing a near 100% success rate, with movie after movie not only making major profits, but also pushing animation forward. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic here, the first 15 movies the studio ever made all made a profit at the box office. A 15-movie streak from the very beginning. Even The Good Dinosaur, that broke that impressive flop-free track record, was followed by new highs for the studio, with the 2010s seeing a number of movies top $1 billion in the box office alone, including Finding Dory, The Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 4. Now, as we explained in our recent video, actually calculating how much money movies make is a little bit tricky. But it's safe to say that with one exception, Pixar was on a financial winning streak. Fast forward to Pixar Weekend 2023 though, and things are looking a little bit less rosy. On June 16th, 2023, Pixar released Elemental, a movie that was projected to open to a box office of $35 to $40 million, which analysts suspected was the company downplaying the figures in order to lower expectations. If that was the strategy though, then they didn't actually go far enough, with Elemental's opening weekend coming in at $29.5 million, the lowest number for any Pixar movie's opening weekend since Toy Story, their first ever film when they were still a relative unknown. And even then, when you adjust for inflation, Toy Story smokes Elemental. Now, admittedly, these numbers have improved considerably since then, with the movie performing adequately throughout the summer and closing on $48.4 million. Still not massive, but a bit of a sleeper hit, admittedly. This isn't just an isolated wobble, though. Pixar Weekend 2022 saw the company release Lightyear, a movie which barely pulled back its production budget in theaters, making $226 million against the $200 million budget. Then, before that, we have the pandemic release trilogy that is Soul, Luca, and Turning Red. These movies absolutely didn't make back their budget thanks to their Disney Plus release strategy, a decision which seemingly blunted their cultural impact too. So the question seems to be, what's going on here? Even if we take the COVID releases with a pinch of salt, the once essentially flawless Pixar is seeing some odd failures. So in this video, let's unpack 3 potential causes of these issues and discuss if we can expect these struggles to continue. I'm sure you know this already, but Pixar is owned by Disney, and has been since the mouse acquired the animation powerhouse in 2006. Frustrated by Pixar's domination in animation, an industry which Disney had once controlled, the House of Mouse hoped that by bringing Pixar into the fray, they would be able to not only get some valuable IP and help them win the ratings battle, but also re-spark their struggling animation department. Pixar did have some concerns about the acquisition though, and as part of the deal, they insisted on a number of terms which forced Disney to keep the two companies more separate than you might expect. In fact, it's said that during the negotiations, Steve Jobs, one of Pixar's co-founders, specifically ensured that the company was kept on a long leash, able to focus on producing the optimal movies, even if that meant delaying release dates, going over budget, or receiving more attention than a traditional Disney project. They were also very keen that the company maintained its separate and special culture, not impacted by Disney's broader strategic approach. Now, to be fair, this did work for a while. For about 10 years, Pixar was given the control that the original deal envisioned. But as cultures naturally shifted, as Pixar leadership left or were forced out amid scandal, and as profitability became a greater issue for Disney, things began to shift. In recent years then, we've seen this change more markedly, with major Pixar releases during COVID being relegated to Disney Plus, rather than being delayed and receiving a full theatrical release. And that's true even of Turning Red, which was released on streaming when the pandemic was beginning to come to an end, and as theatrical exhibition would have realistically been pretty plausible. More than that, Disney also put these movies on Disney Plus for free, not choosing to even add an additional fee as they did for other films like Mulan or Black Widow. Some have argued then that this focus on Disney Plus has damaged Pixar, making it feel less like a prestigious theatrical event and more just like streaming fodder, with them theorizing that this has hurt Pixar even beyond COVID, as families may now be less likely to go to the cinema if they're used to getting Pixar for free at home. It's not just movies either. The push towards Disney Plus has also seen Pixar developing original series for the platform, something which may have diluted the prestige and power of the Pixar brand, especially when combined with the studio's recent focus on sequels and profitability. Maybe that's not Disney's fault though. Maybe the market is just shifting towards IP and streaming, and thus this is the only way to truly keep Pixar alive. It's certainly true that the marketplace is changing, with Sony and Universal both dominating animation in 2023 thus far. Even more notable is the fact that these companies' two biggest movies, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and the Super Mario Bros. Movie, are both IP-based, and one is a sequel. This is a trend that's been observable in live-action cinema for a while now, but previously it seemed that animation was at least partially protected from the push towards sequels and IP-driven projects. But it's beginning to look like this isn't as true as it once was, with studios who lean into IP and sequels outperforming the old masters over at Pixar. Pixar's animators may have once scoffed at studios like Illumination, but it seems that with Pixar's resonance slipping with younger generations, these other studios are growing in market share, even if Pixar purists don't appreciate minion-based antics as much as children do. These other studios have also been able to manage costs more effectively than Pixar ever have, producing movies for significantly less money than the $200 million that Pixar productions so often come in at. And that's in part because, unlike Pixar, these studios often utilize smaller teams, don't regularly maintain staff even when they're not working on projects, and use foreign third parties and subsidiaries in order to bring down prices. Pixar may feel like they have some kind of intellectual or moral superiority when it comes to their in-house production and their focus on original IP, but with even them leaning harder and harder into sequels and spin-offs, it looks like even they know that the market is changing around them. Maybe it's ultimately just true that we live in a less monocultural moment than we once did. And with splintering demands and appetites, it looks like Pixar may need to learn from these new market shifts and begin to make more broad, or at least cheaper, content. Now, the fact that Pixar isn't doing this leads some to suggest that Pixar are actually hurting themselves, maybe in pursuit of some unattainable artistic idealism. Pixar certainly revolutionized animation in the late 90s and 2000s. In fact, the team didn't even just succeed at Pixar, because following their acquisition, the company's leaders, including John Lasseter and Edwin Catmull, even turned around Disney's animation division, spearheading projects like Moana and Frozen. But since their departures in 2017 and 2018 respectively, things have fallen apart a little bit. The company's new leader, Pete Docter, might have directed seminal Pixar movies like Monsters Inc., Up, and Inside Out, as well as writing the original stories for Toy Story and WALL-E, but arguably he might not be the best leader for Pixar right now. He's very popular with the creatives, in part due to his pedigree within the company, and he's also pretty popular with the executives, hence his selection. But given the state of the company right now, some are questioning his broader strategic abilities beyond just the creative and artistic. Admittedly, this analysis might be a little bit harsh, given that he walked into a total power vacuum at the company, and considering that a lot of these relative failures were greenlit before he even took the job. But that hasn't stopped some from speculating about his future at the company. It's not just these business and management critiques which have landed at the feet of Doctor either though, with some also complaining about Pixar's creative approach. The broad argument here is that instead of making movies with broadly popular and approachable themes and addressing key underlying issues like belonging and the meaning of being human, exceptionalism and celebrating difference, or the importance of family and handling transition, they've replaced these broad themes with more personal and creator-driven stories, which some argue are just less approachable. Now, a movie like Elemental is about as approachable as you can get, basically just following a standard rom-com format. But the critique still lands that Pixar has become too focused on identity and politics instead of just telling compelling stories. Now, admittedly, this is an issue which needed to be addressed at the company. Old Pixar films do feature very little diversity at all, and their first female director was fired from her movie before Brave was even wrapped. But some do suggest that the company has become too preoccupied with this so-called wokeness. Now, I'm not going to get into that debate right here, as we did a whole video analysing the data behind the claim that Disney and Pixar are losing money due to their wokeness, which you should watch and is linked in the description. Regardless of the exact reason though, Pixar does have a major issue. Previously, they were able to act like a luxury brand, releasing premium, high-budget products relatively infrequently. They were able to release 1 or 2 movies a year, delaying them without consequence and starting all over again, and still recoup their higher-than-average budgets. But whether it's due to damage inflicted by Disney, the market, or themselves, it looks like Pixar might need to find a new path forward.
Things are expected to change with a story like this, so make sure you stay on top of updates. That way you know what's going on, and let's be honest, it always feels great to stay on top of things. Even within TLDR, a few of us have been brushing up our InDesign skills in order to create the newspaper we're currently working on. It turns out that making a professional-looking newspaper is pretty difficult, so we headed to Skillshare to take their course on the topic. Unlike when I tried to learn InDesign for another never-released project a few years ago, this time I was guided through the process quickly and effectively, and this time the project will actually see the light of day thanks to Skillshare's incredibly easy-to-follow guides. It's not just that either. You likely already knew Skillshare for classes on things like photography, editing and illustration, but Skillshare also has hundreds of career-focused classes too. We all know at this stage that traditional jobs aren't one size fits all. I mean, I finished university and came straight into a job at a YouTube channel. That's not necessarily the path that you want to take, but the courses on Skillshare can help you design a career to fit you. There's courses on everything from how to start a business to maximising your workflow or how to grow in e-commerce. Another course that Jack's actually taking to help with the newspaper project. And if you use our link, you can get access to all of that for free. That's right, the first 1,000 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare.